This week on Business Mike, the business of toys. My guest today is Fatuma Abdullah. She's the founder of Akiki Dolls, a company which was born out of her need as a mother to empower her daughter. In today's show, we discuss what role Akiki Dolls is playing in empowering young African girls, along with what it takes to create a product for children and the thought process behind making sure they embrace it. All this and more next on Business Mike.
You're listening to the Business Mike podcast, amazing interviews with inspiring entrepreneurs. For more amazing interviews, go to www.businessmike.com or download our podcast every Monday from Pod Africa.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Business Mike. Joining me today is Fatuma. Fatuma, welcome to the show. Can you just let the listeners know a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Okay, my name is Fatuma Abdullah, which of course you know. And what I'm doing right now, basically, I want to contribute to a positive raising of African children. Because for me, I found that there's a huge gap with regards to especially the kids between 3 years old and 8 years old, whereby the stuff and the toys that we place in front of them doesn't really have something they can identify with, number one. And I don't think it is, for me personally, what I felt is they don't have something they can identify, it's call their own and something to be proud of. And then later in life, when you start asking kids to be proud African children, they have no point of reference because you've been giving them everything else that has been flying through the media, all your mainstream characters, all the way from Sleeping Beauty to Barbie. And then for her as an African child, what is her point of reference? So for me, I built a Kiki so that not only my daughter, but all African children, the generation, at least my daughter's generation now and the ones that come after, they'll have a character, a Kiki, who will have taken them across Africa, and basically a character they can grow in love with and identify with. So that's what I'm in the process of doing and developing right now.
Akiki, that's an interesting name. What made you choose that as a name for your character, for this particular doll?
Okay, Akiki, I was looking through stuff and every girl likes a precious stone, I think. So when I looked through the precious stones, I found ruby is the one that resonated a lot with me. It's a precious stone. It is royalty, princess. And these, I mean, when you start reading more about stones and their characteristics and what they symbolized, like the ruby was used a lot by royalty, I said, I think this would be the right name for our kids and the kids that come after them. Let them feel like royalty, let them act like royalty, and how they present themselves. They should not be shy. So for me, those are the qualities I wanted. Something energized, self-confident children who have a very high self-esteem and positive image.
Right. So you have Akiki, the doll, but then there's also a book series which tells stories about this particular character. Can you tell us what inspired you to, in addition to the doll, start a book series and what these particular books are all about?
Okay, for me, Akiki has been an evolution because the more I delved into, I call it becoming a conscious parent. So whereby you start looking at how you're raising your kid and how you want the best for your child. So I had the doll, which was a physical thing. So, and then I said, Akiki, she's a character. I have her in my head in terms of what she likes, what she doesn't like, but I need to pass that on and somehow put her into motion. So the book came along. I've been writing, I did a lot of writing in my previous life in terms of report writing and everything, which is more factual. So writing a children's book was also another side of creativity and basically just taking yourself into a young place. Most of my stories are in relation to my kids, how I love watching kids and even the questions that they ask. They're very knowledgeable human beings at their age where they're at right now. But yeah, so Akiki comes to life in the stories. So like when you read the stories, and my stories also kind of have a hidden moral behind them. My first published book is Akiki short stories. So that one is like 3 stories in one. I just try to keep them very short. If you've ever tried reading to kids, their attention span is little. So you need to capture them within those 5-10 minutes of when you're reading the story. So I've kept my stories very short. But I tend to also have something they can pick, they can learn with. So my first story is where Akiki lost a watch, and then she came up with an idea of how to find the owner of the watch. So for kids, I find they're like, okay, so also teaching them in terms of honesty. When you find something that doesn't belong to you, what do you do? And then the second story is one which I find is the favorite one with most kids, is because Akiki gets lost in the mall. And I think for a lot of parents, you have that 5 seconds heart attack when you turn around and you don't see your child. Your mind just goes crazy. But also we need to kind of empower our children as well. When you get lost, what do you do? Do you know mommy's name? Do you know her phone number? Who do you need to go and talk to? Don't just talk to anyone. You talk to people who are wearing uniform at the shop. So that type of stuff I'm also trying to teach them, because I think storytelling is very important. For kids, that's how they learn. There's class they do, but when you tell them stories and when they engage, that sticks in their head. So you find out, oh yeah, mommy, Akiki said we need to do this, or Akiki did this when she found herself here. So for me, it's also teaching them. So I find stories as a way of, imparting knowledge, so to speak, the same way our great-grandparents and grandparents did it.
No, that's absolutely right. And one thing that I'm curious about, especially when you're writing children's books, is the mindset that you need to have, because as an adult, there's a particular way you think. So something might make sense for you as you're writing a story, but for a child at a particular age, it might not necessarily make sense in terms of the story. They think in a different way from us. So what sort of, can I say, mindset do you get into to write a story that you feel through the eyes of a child would be engaging and would make sense for them?
Actually, I find writing children's books much harder than adult books, especially if you're writing like your own autobiography, because adults, they just read through stuff and they pick stuff, and as you're right, you get to engage at the same level. For children, it needs to be, you need to get to the punchline very quickly. So you create a character, the character then comes through an adventure, and then you end it quickly. So that one is more of a challenge, actually, if I would think about it, rather than writing a grown-up type of book. So in terms of the mindset, as I said, for me, mine is a lot based on the daily life of a child. So I haven't yet started taking Akiki on adventures. So far, there's no sci-fi type of adventures that she's doing. It's normally adventures that surround our children day-to-day lives, whereby she travels. I mean, I'm currently working on a manuscript where she's traveling. I'd like her to travel across Africa and to teach the children at least a few languages in each and every African tribe. So those are the stuff that Akiki would be doing. So that's also in terms of opening the children's minds to the rest of the continent. So mine is not necessarily fiction, but in terms of a way of putting a point across to the kids. Yeah.
Well, you have the book and then you have the doll.
Yeah.
So obviously you want these two product lines to complement each other. So for someone who's engaged with Akiki the doll first and they aren't aware of the book, how do you weave in the book? And for someone who's interacted with the book first, how do you weave in the doll? So how do you make it such that someone can actually get both and that they complement each other?
Yeah, no, I think especially for girls, for the book also, one of the things I'm trying to do is have a lot of children read and to read about themselves and to learn. And then also for us parents to read also to our kids, because the book also has a lot of Black African characters. So you find the kids amazed that, oh my God, this one looks like this. So for them, the book can be independent. When they find there's a doll, it's also a plus because I've known the character. So like for kids also, when they're playing with a Kiki, my daughter sometimes plays with a Kiki if I'm not playing with her myself or talking to her. But yeah, so if it is like having tea, because now you know Akiki does this, or she likes a lot of food, or she likes meat. So when you're having your dinner or stuff and you're playing with Akiki, so the doll is more or less a plus to the character, because the doll, you can take her everywhere. I mean, she like, you journey with her. The way I've made the doll also, she's very versatile. So she has a very durable body made out of vinyl, and then you can play with her in the sand, you can play with her in the bathtub, because knowing kids, you want to take her to bath and stuff like that. So you can take her everywhere. So when you have the book you read about Kiki's stories, and then after that, when you have the doll, you actually go with your journey and talk to Kiki throughout, I mean, the way you're playing with her and whatever it is that you're doing.
Right. So in that sense, the way I would interpret it is that the book sheds some more light on Akiki's personality and character. So the child gets to know that, oh, Akiki likes this. So that the next time they're perhaps interacting, she might do the thing she saw Akiki do in the book.
Or she develops her own stories with Akiki, so she can go with Akiki and have tea time, go and introduce Akiki to her friends. Because another thing is, I wanted our children to have a doll they can be proud of. You know, where it's a pretty doll. Because sometimes you find you give your child a doll, and then after that she's just like, "Aish, mommy, no." That's why she'll put it down, and someone else brings another doll and she jumps onto it. So I wanted them to have something they can be proud of. When they have the doll and she's pretty and they like her and she looks like them, and then they go and read the books, then for them it also gives them, you know what, I mean, we can do this, because I'm all about self-confidence and positivity. I would like to see our kids, which I think is happening a lot with the whole African movement and stuff, where African is becoming funky. So our kids need to stand up tall and proud, you know, next to other races, and say, you know, we're also good at what it is we do. We've read our stuff, we've done our stuff. And yeah.
Right. So how did you get people to know about Akiki? Obviously, you mentioned your daughter was a huge influence, but apart from that, how did you get the word out, like to tell people that, look, I'm making these dolls and these are the advantages of having them? How did you tackle that problem as a business owner?
Business, as I said, with the shoestring budget, social media is the same thing. I used to be very anti-social media in my previous life, but now it's like my best friend, especially Facebook. So opening a page just dedicated to Akiki, just letting people know, and also word of mouth. I think as an entrepreneur, also for people to know you exist, you need to be out there. So when you hear of networking opportunities, you go there, mention what it is you do. So you need to be out there. Get out of your comfort zone. Just be out there. Attend anything that you feel that would add value to your business and to your brand, because that's how it grows. People start talking about you, and once they start talking about you, then after that, you get into contact with people either who can partner with or who you can leverage on. And yeah, it starts growing and people start becoming, I know Akiki Dolls. I've seen Akiki Dolls. So then at least you know, okay, fine. That is it. But then there's now the bit of where you need to translate all that to cash, which is also another challenge, yeah.
Right. Yeah, and that obviously is a huge problem for many entrepreneurs, because you come up with this brilliant idea. It makes so much sense in your head.
Yes.
You execute it and then nothing. And you're wondering why on earth and people buying this. It's wonderful. So you're getting that connection with your
I think you really need to have a connection or even a relationship in terms with your clients, and you need to have something that you stand for and you keep at it. I think as an entrepreneur, once you've decided this is the journey I'm going to take, some people have successes whereby not overnight, but they've been working behind the scenes. But shortly after, it balloons into something very big. Other people need to slog harder, depending on the industry you're in. The toy industry I can see it's very hectic on my part, because there's a lot of, you're dealing with people who have got huge budgets. So if it's like advertising a blockbuster movie and here you are trying to do a small production. So that also differs, but you need to keep at it. I always say never quit. If it is your passion and you believe in what it is that you're trying to do, keep at it. One day you'll get the breakthrough that comes through. But I think, You need to keep at it. That's the advice I would give.
All right. And you mentioned something there which I just want to elaborate on. The fact that some people, not just in your industry, but other industries whose competition, have massive budgets for marketing and advertising. So, for instance, in your case, how do you, go about competing with them? Are there particular places that you might push your dolls, or certain avenues you use which you feel a much better platform for you versus, doing the traditional newspaper, TV, radio kind of thing?
I think with social media, you're able to connect with people and people are able to get back to you. So that way they have I know who does this thing. So even when I'm telling someone about the product, I know Fatuma and I know what she stands for and stuff like this. So it's almost like they're doing the marketing for you, which is unlike the traditional one where, say, I would plaster a big advert or a billboard. And that's when, depending on what it is. But you see also in terms of the message I'm trying to convey, how I'm getting my customers is people who are becoming consciously aware that, guys, this is what you're doing to our kids. So we need to be able to do better now that we know better. So when you're reading to your child, what type of stories do you read to her? When she's playing with her toys, what type of toys is she playing? What are you trying to teach her at this very tender age? So it's all about the message.
Right. And in your particular industry, what are some of the challenges involved? For instance, I know once you started this business, there are certain hurdles that came your way that you had to overcome. So for anyone listening that maybe wants to enter the toy industry, what sort of things should they look out for? Yeah,
you need to look out in terms of your product, what it is. I mean, your differentiating factor. If you're coming out with a certain toy, what is the difference, or why should I buy your toy instead of going to the next toy? And also you find, but when people buy toys for their children, it's not necessary. Price is a big factor. So I think some people, it's easier to buy a cheap toy to get the child to keep quiet without thinking. This is why I say sometimes unconsciously you provide them with a lot of junk without knowing. And then so you need to understand what it is you're trying to do, and also what your differentiating factor is in the industry and what would make you stand out.
Right. And in your particular case, knowing what you know now with all the experience, if you could go back in time and give yourself a piece of advice about something that you learned on this journey, what would you say to yourself that would perhaps save you a lot of trouble?
Why didn't you start sooner? I'm joking. There's that. There's that of why I didn't start sooner. But also, I think as an entrepreneur also, I mean, a lot of us were working parents before we became entrepreneurs. So in terms of making sure you have a proper savings, so that you don't start becoming too desperate when you're doing your business. Because when you're desperate, you start making a lot of mistakes. You either start, so I would tend to think, don't be in a hurry. Build your idea, work out the channels, do the network, understand the industry, what would be the obstacles, and just, because it doesn't happen overnight. You have to keep slogging for a while before you get there. So I tell myself, it's not something that happens overnight. And there'll always be challenges. Just make a point of learn from your mistakes and move on. Because sometimes you find people, oh my goodness, I should have done this, but mistakes happen and a lot of failures. You find that, I like reading all these books about entrepreneurs whereby you find guys fails like 10 times before he finally got the breakthrough. But that just shows you the resilience. So it's just about, keep working and move on.
Right. Now, final question. This is my favorite. If you were cast away to a desert island and you could only take one of each, what book would you take with you? What song would you take with you? And what movie would you take with you?
Okay. That's a good question. The book I would take with me is actually the Bible. And because every time you read the Bible, even if you read the same verse, and I read it this week and I read it a month later, it somehow sounds different. So it's like you're reading something new all the time, and there's so much to learn. So I would take the Bible with me. But the other two, I thought about it and I was just like, actually, you know what? I would skip both of them and ask for a paper and a pen. Or pencil, rather, because a pen might run out of ink. A pencil with a sharpener.
And why would you want those in particular? Because
I think every day we have a story. It's a new chapter. It's your new life. And I think my thing with movies and songs, sometimes there's too much noise and you need to clear your head. So when you meditate and you're relaxed and stuff and you're calm, I think when you have a story, you write it all down. So every day would be a different story. So I'd be writing that down and leaving something, God forbid, if no one comes and picks me up from the deserted island. I'll have left something for people to think about. So that's why I'd like a pen and a book.
Right. Well, how can people get in touch with you on social media, as you mentioned, or website or email? How can they connect with you online?
Okay, online they can get me on Facebook. I have my personal page on Facebook, and then there's also the Akiki page on Facebook, which is at akiki.dolls. And then also email info@akikidolls.com. Yeah, I think the email and the social media, I'm quick to respond to those ones. So if anyone wants to get in touch with me that way. The website is also www.akikidolls.com. I'm just working on making it an e-commerce site so you all can buy dolls.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Fatuma, for taking the time to share with us your expertise, knowledge, and story on Business Mike. And we wish you the very best with Akiki Dolls.
Oh, yeah, no, thank you very much. Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Business Mike podcast. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you'd like to listen to more episodes just like this one, simply go to businessmike.com. I would love to hear from you. So if you've got any questions or feedback, you can reach me on Twitter at Daudi Mugabe, on Facebook at Business Mike, or email. That's daudi@businessmike.com. Don't forget, we have a brand new episode every Monday. And until then, take care.